They never expected humans to survive the test. The Galactic Concordance was a grand entity, an alliance of species who, over eons, had shaped the stars into a vibrant network of interconnected worlds. It was a civilization founded on order and reason, where every discovery about life and biology was cataloged, understood, and quantified. The laws of nature, as they had been observed across countless star systems, were predictable. Species were born, they evolved, and eventually they reached their limits. It was a comforting certainty for the beings who occupied this vast, interconnected empire. So when a new species, humans, arrived, eager to join the concordance, it was assumed that they would be like every other newcomer. A fascinating oddity, no doubt, but ultimately limited by the same constraints that all life faced. They would be tested, catalogued, and fit into the grand schema of existence. The experiment was meant to be a routine procedure, a simple biological resilience test, one that had been applied to hundreds of species before. It wasn't designed to challenge anyone. After all, they had tested some of the most advanced and resilient beings in the galaxy. The tests were meant to confirm, with certainty, the inherent fragility of life. A species might thrive in one environment, only to falter in another. There was a certain beauty in it, seeing the way nature, in all its complexity, had sculpted different forms of life across the cosmos. And so, the humans entered the test chambers with all the expectation of a simple footnote in the records. They weren't feared. They weren't special. They were just another species, like the rest. But then, the impossible happened. In the testing facility of the Concordance Medical Institute, an array of chambers hummed with the soft, metallic whine of operating systems. The air was thick with the scent of antiseptic and the low-frequency hum of advanced technology. On one side of the observation deck, the most prominent scientists in the Concordance watched with detached curiosity, confident that their instruments would confirm what they already knew. Humans were not prepared for what the galaxy would throw at them. The first trial was a simple atmospheric simulation. The chamber's internal atmosphere was slowly altered, beginning with the gradual increase of carbon dioxide levels, mimicking the conditions of a planet that had been ravaged by industrial pollution. Species exposed to such a shift typically lost their motor functions within minutes, their lungs collapsing under the stress of oxygen deprivation. The human subject, standing alone in the center of the chamber, seemed barely affected. Their pulse rate increased slightly, an expected response. But that was all. No signs of distress, no panicked attempts to escape. They simply adapted. But then, the machine malfunctioned. A glitch in the atmospheric processor, a mistake, a malfunction. The air in the chamber plummeted. Oxygen, once abundant, was replaced by a near vacuum. The temperature began to fluctuate wildly. It wasn't gradual, it was sudden. Any other species would have collapsed immediately. The Fraxtal, with their crystalline skin, would have shattered from the pressure. The Yelvan would have suffocated as their bodies failed to maintain internal pressure. The Catheri, adapted to the deep ocean's crushing depths, would have bled out, their organs violently rupturing. But the human survived. The monitors were blinking furiously as Dr. Kelmvarios, a being with 3 eyes, each one focused on a different part of the spectrum, stared in disbelief at the data. There was no way this could be happening. The human's respiratory rate spiked, but it didn't slow down. Their blood pressure remained within normal parameters, even as the chamber's oxygen levels dropped to near zero. Impossible. In all his years of study, Dr. Varios had never seen anything like it. Species adapted, yes, but they didn't simply endure extremes without intervention. But this human, the body was fighting, as if it were in a state of war with the environment itself. And not only was it winning, it was turning the tables. The monitors beeped, each one flashing strange data, new patterns emerging in real time. The human's blood chemistry was adjusting. Enzymes were reconfiguring, rerouting. The body wasn't just withstanding the pressure, It was rewriting the rules of biology, as though it were defying the very laws of nature. Cellular respiration rates surged, compensating for the loss of oxygen in a way no other species could. Even the nervous system, normally the most fragile under such conditions, appeared to be restructuring itself. The room fell silent as the human's vitals continued to stabilize. And then, they didn't just survive. The human did something even more inexplicable. The heat in the chamber, which had fluctuated between unbearable extremes, was absorbed by the human's body in a way that seemed almost conscious. No, intentional. The sweat glands, normally a futile defense against such drastic changes in temperature, seemed to open up at precise moments, releasing moisture at exact intervals, cooling the body through evaporation. The data came in faster, overwhelming the systems. The biological systems were evolving before their very eyes. With each passing second, the human was defying expectations, breaking new ground in a way that sent shockwaves through the room. This was no accident. The human had adjusted, immediately, instinctively, as though it had been designed for this very moment. They were not simply enduring these conditions. They were mastering them. For a moment, Dr. Varios wondered if it was a fluke. But as the tests continued, gravity simulation after gravity simulation, temperature extremes, exposure to poisons, crushing pressures, humans displayed the same behavior. A constant, dynamic resistance. Where other species struggled, humans excelled. The final test, one that simulated the vacuum of space, was the ultimate challenge. Even the Orvethi, who had evolved in the hostile depths of their frozen world, would not have survived the immediate vacuum exposure. They would have entered hibernation in seconds. But the human, their body didn't just endure it. It fought against it, as though every part of them was determined to continue. Dr. Varios could hardly comprehend what he was seeing. The results were conclusive and entirely unnatural. The human biology was not merely resilient. It was an anomaly, a force of nature that could not be explained by any evolutionary model. This was something different, something new, something that had no place in the accepted science of the universe. His hands trembled as he pulled up further data. He ran simulations, comparisons to other species, cross-referencing biological data across galaxies. But there was no precedent. The human body was impossible. They had become the proverbial wild card in the game of life, a species that could defy all biological rules, twisting the very fabric of what it meant to survive. And yet, the question remained, why? Was it a genetic quirk, a mutation, or something far darker? Something engineered. A dark thought crept into Dr. Varios's mind. What if the humans knew? What if they had always known what they were capable of? What if their biology was a secret they were keeping from the galaxy, waiting for the right moment to reveal it? If this was the true nature of humans, if this was the power they possessed, then what other secrets did they hide? What else had they unlocked in the depths of their biology? And what would happen when the galaxy discovered just how dangerous they truly were? Before we jump into this epic tale, subscribe to StarBoundApex HFY for the most intense sci-fi battles, legendary warriors, and universe-shaking wars. Don't miss out. Hit that subscribe button and join the fight. The news spread across the concordance like wildfire. By the time the data had been reviewed and verified by the highest scientific council, the implications were clear. Humans were an enigma, a cosmic riddle that defied every rule of biology known to the galaxy. This was no simple evolutionary quirk, no mere anomaly. The very foundation of their biology was unlike anything else. It had become undeniable that humanity represented something extraordinary. But exactly what that was, no one knew. Dr. Varios, who had once confidently believed in the predictable flow of evolutionary theory, was now haunted by the unsettling notion that the human species had rewritten the very laws of nature. What could explain such unprecedented resilience? The more he pondered it, the more a terrifying thought gnawed at him. Had the humans always known? It was a week before the council convened to discuss the findings. Galactic representatives from over 50 worlds, beings who had lived for centuries, gathered in the ancient hall beneath the central spire of the Concordance's scientific complex. They came from species who had mastered genetics, who had mapped the stars and unlocked the secrets of time itself. But as they sat there, discussing humanity's biology, there was an unease in the air, a sense that they were on the brink of uncovering something they were not prepared for. The council chamber was an awe-inspiring room, lined with tall pillars of dark chrome and filled with holographic displays of star maps and species data. The representatives took their seats in silence, their varied physiologies taking in the information projected before them. The human subject, who had endured all the tests, was the focal point of the debate. Dr. Varios, his three eyes blinking in sync, stood before the holograms, his voice steady but tinged with a sense of urgency. "The data is conclusive," he began. "The humans, they are not like any species we have ever encountered. Their biology is adaptive in ways that should be impossible, not just resilient, transcendent. They seem capable of rewiring their physiological responses in real time, adjusting to nearly any environmental condition. It's as if their bodies were designed to survive extreme conditions, to withstand what would obliterate most life forms. And more troubling, they adapt faster than we can monitor." A murmur rippled through the room, and a few of the representatives exchanged uneasy glances. Many were skeptical, some were alarmed. The idea that a species could possess this kind of adaptability was simply too much to process. "Can you explain the how of this?" one of the delegates asked, his voice deep and calm, though his eyes betrayed his confusion. He was from the Tulrath, a species known for their biological engineering advancements. How can a species with such a short evolutionary history possess these capabilities? Dr. Varios paused, his mind racing as he sifted through the data. He had come to a conclusion, but it was a theory so wild, so frightening, that he barely dared speak it aloud. "We can't explain it. Not entirely. But I've been running simulations on their genetic sequences. The results are..." He hesitated. "Strange. Humans have what we might describe as an extreme genetic plasticity. Their genomes are not static. They respond, mutate, and reorganize at an astonishing rate. It's as if their bodies are not bound by the natural limits that govern other species. They can mutate." Another council member interrupted, a Yelvan who had studied evolutionary biology for centuries. "Are you suggesting they evolve in real time?" Dr. Varios nodded slowly. "Yes, but it's more than that. It's as if their bodies are constantly analyzing the environment and seeking optimal ways to survive. Their cellular structures are not just resilient, they are intelligent. When exposed to toxins, their bodies reroute metabolic pathways to neutralize the threat. When exposed to pressure, their bones reinforce themselves, becoming denser, harder. They learn from every environment. The question isn't how they adapt, it's why they are capable of it in the first place. No species we've studied operates like this." The silence in the room was palpable. It wasn't just the scientific community that was in disbelief. It was a philosophical shockwave. The foundation of life itself was being questioned. Was humanity's biology a grand cosmic fluke, or was it something else entirely? One of the more senior members of the council, an ancient being from the Ellerai species, whose mind had long ago surpassed the constraints of organic thinking, finally spoke. "Perhaps you are looking at this from the wrong perspective," they said, their voice soft yet heavy with centuries of experience. "Maybe the question is not how humans have evolved, but what they have evolved for." Dr. Varios blinked. The room fell silent again, as the gravity of the Ellerai's words settled into the minds of the others. What did they mean? What were they implying? It wasn't just a question of survival. It was a question of purpose. "This isn't just about biological resilience," the Ellerai continued, their translucent form shifting as they adjusted their posture. "This is something different. This is a species that has evolved to withstand forces greater than those of their own world, forces that should be impossible for any life form to endure. Dr. Verios felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up. The words were like a distant echo of something he had felt deep in his bones, something unsettling, something profound. What if they were meant to face something far more dangerous than we understand? What if their biology was designed for something else? The idea hung in the air like a weight. Designed. Could it be? Could humanity's extraordinary biology be the result of something deliberate, something beyond natural evolution? The thought was almost too disturbing to entertain. After all, if such a possibility were true, it meant that humans were not simply another species among billions. They were a creation, a tool. Dr. Verios took a slow, shaky breath, trying to wrap his mind around the enormity of what he was hearing. If humans were engineered to survive extreme conditions, could they have been created by another species? Were they the product of ancient experiments, long lost in the echoes of time? But why? Perhaps we are witnessing the culmination of a long-forgotten experiment. The LRA's voice was quiet but firm. An ancient race, or perhaps even the first species, may have seeded them, shaping them in their image or for a purpose we cannot yet understand. And now they walk the galaxy unaware of the forces that created them. Dr. Verios' mind raced. He had seen the data. He had lived the facts. But the implications were staggering. If the human species had been designed, by whom? And why? What purpose could they possibly serve? Were they a weapon? A tool for a greater cause? Or perhaps something even darker, a forgotten key to unlocking an ancient mystery? And then the most terrifying question of all. Had the humans already uncovered these truths? The council chamber seemed to pulse with the weight of these revelations. The quiet buzz of conversation started to fill the room, but it was a murmur of uncertainty, of fear. The humans were still relatively new to the concordance. Had they hidden their true potential? Or were they waiting for the galaxy to discover it for themselves? Dr. Verios' thoughts were interrupted as one of the human representatives, a young officer named Commander Jason Blake, stood to speak. His expression was unreadable, but the tone of his voice carried a sense of purpose, as though he had been expecting these questions all along. "We are aware of the potential in our biology," Blake said calmly, his voice echoing through the chamber. "But we don't know its origin. What we do know is this: we've had to fight for survival on our homeworld for as long as we've existed. Every challenge we've faced has made us stronger, because we adapt. You are right. We don't know why our biology is like this. But we are not the same as every other species in the galaxy. We don't just survive the odds. We change them." The council fell silent once again. No one had expected the humans to be so bold, so forthright. But the question lingered. If the humans were right, if they were truly capable of changing the odds, what would happen when the galaxy found out just how dangerous they could become? The tension between the humans and the concordance was palpable, and yet it was more than just a political struggle. It was a cosmic chess game, with every move reshaping the very future of the galaxy. The council, deeply unsettled by the implications of human biology, quickly moved into a new phase of investigation. There were whispers in the corridors of power, quiet conversations behind closed doors. Could it be that humanity was, in fact, the missing piece in the galaxy's most ancient puzzle? Could they be the key to understanding forces that even the oldest civilizations had long since forgotten? Dr. Verios, now more obsessed than ever, had been granted access to classified files. Ancient texts, relics of civilizations far older than the concordance itself. What he found in the archives was not what he had expected. The records spoke of a time long before the first stars were mapped, a time when the galaxy was young, and ancient beings roamed the cosmos with technologies so advanced they seemed to warp the very fabric of reality. These beings, known as the First Ones, were rumored to have seeded life across the stars, shaping species not merely for survival, but for an unknown purpose. Some scholars believe that these first ones had once sought to create a race of beings who could endure and survive any catastrophe. Their greatest creation, they speculated, was humanity. But there was a darker side to the story. Hidden beneath layers of encrypted data were troubling references to an experiment gone wrong. Something had gone awry with the humans' creation, a catastrophic flaw that the first ones had attempted to correct, only to vanish before they could finish their work. The files were fragmented, pieces of a much larger puzzle. There were mentions of something called the catalyst, a mysterious force that seemed to have influenced the course of humanity's evolution. But no one knew what it was, only that it had played a role in unlocking the humans' true potential. Dr. Veros knew that these ancient texts, though cryptic, could hold the answers he sought. He had suspected that humanity's biology had been influenced by some external force, but now the truth seemed even more elusive. Had the humans been designed as some kind of ultimate organism, capable of enduring and adapting to all conditions, or was there something more sinister at work, something the humans themselves didn't understand? As he pored over the records, a chilling thought struck him. The humans' adaptability wasn't just a gift, it was a response to a hidden threat, something they had been created to confront. But what could be so dangerous that an entire species had been engineered to survive it? Was humanity merely a tool, a weapon to face an existential danger far beyond the stars? Or had they become something else altogether, something that even their creators had feared? Meanwhile, the human delegation, still led by Commander Jason Blake, had grown increasingly uneasy. They were used to being outsiders in the galaxy, but now the stakes had changed. They had caught the attention of beings who were not only curious about their biology, but also terrified of its implications. And despite the Concordance's outward calm, the humans could feel the mounting suspicion around them. There were questions, accusations, veiled threats. If the Concordance's highest council feared something about humanity's origins, it meant that there was more to their past than anyone had been told. Commander Blake, though outwardly composed, was deeply troubled by the secrecy surrounding their true nature. His team had made their own discoveries about the catalyst, though they knew very little about its true origins. They had pieced together fragments of ancient texts, passed down through generations of humans. Texts that spoke of an event known only as the Awakening, a moment in their distant past when humanity's latent genetic potential had been unlocked. There were no clear explanations in the records, only strange symbols, fragments of stories about a forgotten race, and warnings from their ancestors about the coming storm. Some humans believed the catalyst was a gift, a blessing. Others feared it was a curse, a force that would eventually consume them all. Blake often found himself haunted by the same question that plagued Dr. Vardos. What had the first ones been trying to do? Back in the council chambers, the debate had grown even more heated. The Concordance had long prided itself on its pursuit of knowledge and its commitment to maintaining the balance of power in the galaxy. But the more they uncovered about humanity's potential, the more the council found themselves wrestling with an impossible decision. Should they allow humanity to continue as part of the Concordance, or should they isolate them, perhaps even eradicate them, before their true power could be realized? The humans possess a kind of control over their biology. One of the representatives from the Varkini, a species known for their mind control abilities, said grimly. It is not simply survival they seek. It is a dominance over their environment. They bend the very laws of nature to their will. What if this ability spreads, if it becomes a force capable of shifting the balance of power in the galaxy? Another representative, a stoic Arakan warrior with skin like polished obsidian, stood up. And what if the catalyst is something else entirely? What if it is a weapon created to wipe out entire civilizations? Perhaps humanity's biology isn't simply resilient. Perhaps it's a virus, something designed to corrupt other life forms. There was a long, uneasy silence in the chamber. The idea of humanity's biology as a weapon sent a ripple of fear through the council. Could it be possible that the catalyst was not merely a gift, but a dormant infection, What if the humans were merely the harbingers of something far more dangerous? But Commander Blake, ever the diplomat, had anticipated these concerns. When he was called to speak before the council, his voice was calm but unwavering. "We are not the enemy here. We have no interest in conquest, nor are we looking to control the galaxy. We simply seek to understand our own origins. But the truth is, we don't fully understand what we've become. We do not even know what our biology is capable of. All we ask is that we be allowed the time to explore the answers for ourselves." There was an uncomfortable pause. The council members exchanged looks, some skeptical, some fearful. The weight of Blake's words hung in the air. Humanity was now at the crossroads of an impossible choice. Would they be accepted into the fold of galactic society, or would they be cast out and viewed as an existential threat? The question, however, was not simply about humanity's future. It was about the future of all life in the galaxy. If the humans had truly been engineered by the first ones, what had they been designed for? Were they a shield against some unknown catastrophe, a weapon against an ancient enemy? Or were they the first of many experiments, a race of cosmic experiments scattered across the stars? One thing was certain: the discovery of humanity's true purpose would change everything. And no one was prepared for the answer that lay ahead. The tension in the galaxy reached a boiling point as the Council's secret investigation into humanity's origins began to unravel further. The revelations about the catalyst and its potential to alter the very fabric of reality were beginning to emerge in ways that no one had predicted. The truth was buried in the cracks of history, but with every new discovery, the pieces of the puzzle came together. Pieces that painted a picture far darker than anyone had imagined. Commander Blake had never felt more isolated. The human delegation had become pariahs of sorts, torn between their desire to belong to the greater galactic community and the growing sense that something far more insidious was at play. Humanity had come to the Concordance seeking knowledge, but what they were finding could very well destroy them. The deeper they dug into the secrets of their own biology, the more terrifying the answers became. Blake had always known that humanity's survival instinct was extraordinary, but the catalyst, that invisible force, that unknown variable embedded deep within their DNA, had begun to reveal its true nature. It wasn't just a biological adaptation. It was a call, a signal buried in the human's very genetic code, waiting to awaken when the time was right. But what was the catalyst trying to awaken them to? Late one night, Blake was alone in his quarters aboard the diplomatic vessel, his eyes fixed on the star maps sprawled across the holotable before him. He had access to the most up-to-date intelligence from across the galaxy. The records of the first ones, those ancient, almost mythical beings, had been pulled from hidden archives and laid bare. Yet, for all the knowledge they contained, there was still a chilling absence in the records. There were gaps in the timeline, moments where the first ones had simply disappeared, as though erased by an unseen hand. And the humans, there was no clear record of them. It was as if they had existed in isolation, forgotten by the very civilizations that had seeded the stars. And then, as if fate had intervened, Blake found it. It was a single line in a forgotten manuscript, tucked away in a corner of an ancient data file, barely noticed by anyone before. The text was fractured, incomplete, but the words struck him like a lightning bolt. When the enduring awaken, the catalyst will call them to the light. Only they will stand against the shadow. Blake's breath caught in his throat. Enduring. The word felt important, too important to ignore. Had it been a reference to humanity? Was it possible that they had been waiting for something, for some event in the galaxy's distant future that would require them to take center stage? Were they not just survivors of their world's violent past, but also guardians of something greater? Blake's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden beeping on his console. It was a communication from Dr. Varios, whose demeanor had shifted dramatically since the last time they spoke. There was a quiet desperation in his voice, a sense of urgency that Blake had not heard before. "You need to come to the research station. We found something," Dr. Varios said, his voice trembling. "Something terrible. The catalyst is more than just a dormant force. It's trying to reach them, Blake. It's calling to the humans. And there's more. There are others, beings we've never seen before." Blake didn't waste a moment. He gathered his team and immediately set course for the research station, his mind racing with the implications of Dr. Varios's words. Beings they had never seen before. Was it possible that the humans were not the only species influenced by the catalyst? Had the first ones, in their attempt to create a resilient race, inadvertently awoken something else, something far older and far more dangerous? As the ship approached the research station, Blake could already feel the weight of the silence that hung in the air. The station's usual hum was absent, and the lights flickered intermittently. The crew aboard had reported strange phenomena in the days leading up to this moment. Visions, whispers in their minds, even hallucinations that seemed to echo across the station's hollow corridors. Blake stepped onto the station's cold, metallic floors, flanked by his team of officers. Dr. Varios was waiting for him at the entrance, his face pale, his eyes wide with terror. "You need to see this," he whispered, leading Blake deeper into the station's labyrinth of hallways. They arrived at a secured lab, the door opening with a quiet hiss. Inside, Blake was confronted by an image that seemed to defy all logic, a holographic map of the galaxy, but with one horrifying detail. There, in the center of it all, was Earth, a blue dot that pulsed with a strange, dark energy. Surrounding it, like tendrils, were other star systems, some marked with strange symbols, others simply labeled unknown. "This is what we've been seeing," Dr. Varios explained, his voice tight with fear. "We've detected energy signatures, alien signals radiating from Earth itself, not just in our time, but spanning millennia. And it's only getting stronger. The catalyst. It's sending out something. A signal." Blake's gaze fixed on the hologram. His mind was racing, trying to process the significance of what he was seeing. Could it be that humanity's true purpose had nothing to do with surviving environmental extremes? Could it be that they had been the vessel, the conduit, through which something far more ancient, far more powerful, was trying to break free? Why haven't the other species detected it? Blake asked, his voice steady but filled with growing concern. "Because it's hidden, Blake," Dr. Varios responded. "It's hidden in the very fabric of humanity's existence. We are the only ones who can sense it. The catalyst is not just a biological phenomenon. It's a cosmic frequency, something that vibrates at a frequency so low, so imperceptible, that only those with the human genome can hear it." Blake's mind raced. He now understood. The humans weren't just survivors. They were receptors, tuned to frequencies that no one else in the galaxy could perceive. They had been chosen, or perhaps designed, to be the beacons of something far older, something that had slumbered in the dark corners of the universe, waiting for the right moment to return. And as the realization hit him, Blake felt an icy chill run through him. The catalyst was not just calling to the humans, it was summoning them. To what? That was the question that haunted him as he stared at the hologram, knowing that the answer might very well unravel the galaxy itself. But one thing was certain. Humanity's existence was not the accident it had seemed. They were not the simple, primitive species they had always believed themselves to be. They were the chosen, the awakening, the harbingers of something far beyond their understanding, something that had been waiting for them. The galaxy had shifted, imperceptibly at first, but now the hum of cosmic tension reverberated across every corner of space. Humanity's role in the unfolding drama was no longer a matter of curiosity or scientific interest. It had become the axis upon which the fate of the universe spun. The catalyst, a force so hidden in the depths of human biology, was far from benign. It was awakening, calling to them. And no one, not even the ancient and powerful Concordance, could ignore it any longer. Commander Blake stood on the observation deck of the diplomatic vessel, staring out into the void. His reflection was a faint silhouette against the stars, the same stars that had been the backdrop to so many of humanity's greatest triumphs and darkest moments. But now, the universe felt different. The silence was oppressive, as if the cosmos itself held its breath, waiting for something that had been set into motion eons ago to finally unfold. The news had spread across the galactic network like wildfire. Strange occurrences had been reported across multiple sectors. Ancient texts were being unearthed, long-forgotten artifacts had resurfaced, and even those who once believed humanity to be nothing more than an anomaly had begun to take notice. There was something about the humans, something that made them different from every other species in the galaxy. Dr. Varios had been relentless in his pursuit of knowledge, his obsession growing with every new discovery. But even he had begun to show signs of strain. His once steady hands now trembled as he flipped through ancient texts, looking for any clue that would explain the inexplicable. He had already uncovered the existence of the first ones, the enigmatic beings who had, according to legend, seeded life across the stars. But there was a growing sense that they had not just created life. They had planned for a moment of reckoning, one that would bring about the ultimate test of survival. And at the heart of that test, humanity was positioned as both the shield and the sword. The catalyst was not simply a dormant force. It was alive in a sense, and it was directing its energy toward an unknown end. The question, as ever, was what that end might be. Blake's thoughts were interrupted by the shrill tone of an incoming transmission. It was from the research station, and the urgency in the voice on the other end was unmistakable. "Commander Blake, you need to get down here. Now." The voice of Dr. Varios crackled over the comm. "We've detected something. Something in the core of the catalyst's signal. It's changing. It's not just a call. It's a ripple, a wave that is spreading across the galaxy. And it's reaching out to us." Blake's heart skipped a beat. A ripple? He didn't need to be a scientist to understand the magnitude of what that meant. If the catalyst was reaching out, it wasn't just to the humans. It was reaching for everything. He immediately gave orders for the crew to prepare for departure. The ship hummed with the energy of purpose, the once monotonous routines now charged with urgency. The unknown was no longer a distant concept. It was here, and it was inescapable. Upon arrival at the research station, Blake found Dr. Varios waiting at the docking bay, his face pale, his expression filled with dread. "We're too late," he whispered. "The catalyst, it's already begun." "What do you mean?" Blake demanded, his voice steady despite the rising panic in his chest. Dr. Varios led him to the main research lab, where a massive display illuminated the room. The holographic map of the galaxy was once again visible, but this time it was different. The familiar star systems, those that had once been stable and predictable, now pulsed with erratic energy. The pulse seemed to be emanating from Earth itself, rippled waves of energy expanding outward, distorting the fabric of space itself. "Look," Dr. Varios said, his voice barely above a whisper. "This isn't just an anomaly in human biology anymore. This is something ancient. We've been tracing the origins of the signal, and it's not a natural phenomenon. It's artificial. Someone, or something, designed the catalyst to send this energy, and it's spreading faster than we anticipated." Blake's eyes narrowed as he studied the map. The ripple was growing, expanding outward at an alarming rate, like a cosmic wave crashing against the shores of reality itself. He could feel the pressure building, the inevitability of it. The catalyst wasn't just a force. It was a signal, a beacon calling out to something far older, far more powerful than anything humanity or the Concordance had ever faced. "What are we dealing with here?" Blake asked, his mind racing. "The catalyst is synchronizing," Dr. Varios replied, his words trembling. "It's harmonizing the frequencies of the galaxy, drawing in energy from across the stars. And in doing so, it's creating a convergence point, a place where the fabric of space-time will thin, a point of no return. The light that the first ones spoke of, it's not a place. It's a moment. The catalyst is opening a rift in the fabric of the universe. A shiver ran down Blake's spine. A rift. The implications were unfathomable. If the catalyst succeeded, it would tear apart the very laws that held the galaxy together. Time, space, and reality itself would be rewritten. The first ones had warned of this moment, but it had always been theoretical, a myth, something relegated to the annals of ancient history. And yet now, it was happening. The enduring, humanity, was awakening to their true purpose, whether they understood it or not. The first ones didn't just create the catalyst to preserve life. Dr. Verios continued, his voice barely audible, as though speaking the words aloud made the truth more real. They created it to test life, to see which species could endure the chaos of the universe, to find those who could stand against the inevitable entropy of existence. And now the test is beginning. Blake clenched his fists, the weight of the situation pressing down on him like an invisible force. He had always thought of humanity as fragile, as a species that fought tooth and nail just to survive. But now he saw the truth. They weren't fragile. They were resilient, capable of withstanding the unimaginable. But resilience alone wouldn't be enough. They had to understand their role in this cosmic game. They had to be ready to face whatever was coming, no matter how terrifying. The ship's comms crackled, and a new transmission came through. It was from the Concordance, an emergency broadcast that had been sent out across the galaxy. The message was clear. The catalyst is spreading. The enduring must be contained. Blake's heart sank. They knew. The Concordance knew what humanity was capable of, and they had made their decision. Humanity would no longer be viewed as an ally, or even as a neutral force. They had become a threat. The ripple was no longer just a signal, it was a warning. Humanity's existence had awakened something far older and far darker than anyone had imagined. And now, the galaxy had to face the consequences. The ship lurched, a violent shudder tearing through the hull as the pulse of the catalyst reached a new intensity. Blake stood at the bridge, staring out at the vast expanse of space, where a dark ripple spread outward, distorting the fabric of reality itself. The lights flickered, and the hum of the ship's engines seemed to warp with the growing tension in the air. The galaxy was changing. The ancient and powerful Concordance had already mobilized, preparing for the worst, and Blake knew humanity's place in all of this would not be one of diplomacy or peace. No, they had become the focal point, the catalyst, pun intended, of an existential conflict that had been brewing for eons. Every species that had once seen humanity as insignificant now understood. Humans were the key to unlocking something far more profound than anyone had dared to imagine. The message from the Concordance still echoed in his mind. The enduring must be contained. Contained, not understood, not embraced. No, humanity's existence had become something that needed to be restrained, hidden away, because the catalyst was no longer merely an ancient artifact of creation. It was alive, and it was a harbinger of an impending apocalypse. Dr. Verios had warned them of the convergence point, a moment in space-time when the universe itself would be torn apart, when the laws of physics would bend and break, when the fabric of existence would thin so much that reality itself might cease to hold. The more Blake thought about it, the more the implications grew. This wasn't a problem that could be solved by military might or scientific ingenuity. This was an event that could unmake the universe as they knew it. Blake turned to the crew on the bridge, their faces drawn with anxiety and determination. They had received reports of strange occurrences all across the galaxy. In some sectors, entire planets were vanishing, their populations lost without a trace. In others, the stars themselves were flickering, as though their light was being dimmed by an unseen force. And then there were the transmissions from alien ships that had ventured too close to Earth, those who had attempted to investigate the source of the ripple and had been lost without a trace. "We need to understand what the catalyst is doing," Blake said, his voice firm despite the creeping dread that threatened to paralyze him. "And we need to do it fast. If the Concordance acts on their decision to contain us, they'll stop at nothing to ensure humanity is removed from the equation. We have to stay ahead of them. Dr. Varios entered the room, his face a mixture of fear and resolve. "Commander, I've found something." He stepped toward the central console, his hands trembling as he keyed in a sequence of data. "I've been running simulations, analyzing the wave patterns, trying to decipher the energy signatures. And I think I've found it. The catalyst isn't just sending out a signal, it's trying to open a door." "A door to what?" Blake asked, his voice low, a sense of foreboding creeping over him. "A door to a different dimension," Dr. Varios replied, his words hanging heavy in the air. "A space beyond our comprehension. The first ones built the catalyst as a way to bridge realities, sort of a cosmic key. And humanity. Humanity is the lock." Blake's blood ran cold. He had known that humanity was different, but he hadn't imagined anything like this. They weren't just a biological anomaly. They were a threshold to something greater, something other. And now, it seemed, that threshold was on the verge of being crossed. "You're saying that the catalyst is opening a rift to another reality?" Blake asked, his voice tight with disbelief. "Not just any reality," Dr. Varios corrected, his voice faltering with awe and terror. "A primordial one. A space that existed before our universe was formed. The first ones built the catalyst to test life against the entropy of time, to find a species that could survive the chaos of the pre-universe. And now, the catalyst is trying to pull us, humanity, through to that other side." Blake couldn't wrap his mind around the enormity of what Dr. Varios was saying. A primordial reality. A space before time itself. The very notion sent shivers down his spine. He had always thought that space-time was a constant, a steady flow of past, present, and future. But this was a tear in that flow, a rupture in the very fabric of reality. And it was coming for them. "Can we stop it?" Blake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Varios shook his head, his face drawn and haggard. "I don't know. The catalyst is beyond our understanding. It's rewriting the laws of physics, altering the fundamental constants of nature. If we don't act soon, the convergence point will collapse space-time entirely, and the universe will be restructured. A new reality will form, one where our galaxy doesn't exist." The implications were staggering. A new reality. A new everything. Blake's mind whirred with the gravity of it. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for the very existence of the universe itself. He turned back to the crew. "We need to get to Earth," he said, determination hardening in his chest. "If we're the key, then we need to understand exactly what the catalyst is trying to do. We have to find the point of origin." The ship's engines roared to life as they jumped to full speed, the stars outside the observation deck blurring into streaks of light. As they hurtled through space, Blake could feel the weight of the universe pressing down on him. They were racing against an unstoppable force, one that had been set into motion long before humanity had even learned to walk. Earth was ahead, but with each passing moment, the ripple from the catalyst grew stronger. Blake couldn't help but feel that they were already too late, that the universe had already begun to change in ways that couldn't be undone. But if there was one thing he knew about humanity, it was this. They were survivors. And no matter what was waiting on the other side of the catalyst's rift, Blake would ensure that humanity would face it head-on. The ship descended toward Earth, cutting through the atmosphere as if the very fabric of reality was tearing around them. Blake gripped the edge of his console, his pulse hammering in his chest. The convergence point was close. Too close. They had no more time. The catalyst, the ancient force that had been dormant for so long, was on the verge of completing its cycle, and humanity was caught at the heart of it. The rift to a primordial dimension was widening, stretching toward them like a hungry maw, eager to consume everything in its path. The crew moved with mechanical precision, each person fully aware of the stakes. The silence on the bridge was deafening. punctuated only by the low hum of the ship's systems. Blake's thoughts raced. Could humanity really be the key to the universe's rebirth? Was it possible that their very existence was the critical factor that would determine whether the multiverse would be torn apart or remade? Earth loomed large in front of them, its familiar blue and green surface now stained with the faint glow of the catalyst's energy, a hazy aura that pulsed in rhythm with the deep, unrelenting waves of the signal. The signal that had drawn them here. The signal that had led them down this path of cosmic catastrophe. Dr. Varios had continued his research, poring over the ancient texts, the scattered clues left by the first ones. The more he uncovered, the clearer it became. Humanity was not just a bystander in this grand cosmic drama. They were the linchpin. The catalyst had chosen them not just as an experiment, but as a bridge, a living, breathing link between dimensions. The potential for both creation and destruction rested in their hands, and the weight of that realization threatened to crush Blake. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. The stakes had never been higher. Whatever happened next would shake the future of the entire universe. The ship came to a shuddering halt in orbit above Earth, and Blake's heart skipped a beat. On the surface, cities were abandoned, their once bustling streets now eerily quiet. It wasn't just the planet that had been altered by the catalyst's signal. It was everything. The sky shimmered with the faintest distortion, as though the laws of physics were beginning to unravel. Earth was no longer the cradle of humanity. It had become the epicenter of an event that would decide the fate of everything. "Commander," Dr. Varios called, his voice cracking over the comms. "I found it. The source. The catalyst is located in a subterranean facility beneath the old city of Atlantis. It's been dormant for millennia, but the signal is coming from there. It's the key. We have to reach it before the rift is fully opened." Blake felt a cold chill sweep through him. Atlantis, an ancient city that had been lost to legend and myth. It had been real, and now its secrets were on the verge of being revealed to the universe. He could feel the shift in the air, a sense of inevitability, as if every moment was inching closer to an end that could not be avoided. "We're going in," Blake said, his voice steady despite the chaos swirling around them. He had always been a man of action, and in that moment, he knew that humanity's survival rested on a razor's edge. There was no time for hesitation. The landing was rough. The ship's landing gear groaned under the stress, but it held firm as the crew disembarked, weapons drawn and eyes sharp. They moved quickly through the ruins of the city, the once pristine structures now shattered, their stone facades worn down by time and neglect. There was no life here, no sound save for the eerie wind that whispered through the desolate streets. But Blake felt something else, a pull, like a gravitational force. It came from deep beneath the earth, calling to him, urging him forward. The catalyst was close. It was waiting. They reached the entrance to the underground facility, an imposing structure buried beneath layers of stone and earth. The walls of the entrance were carved with ancient symbols, their meanings lost to time, but Blake could feel the weight of their significance. These were the marks of the first ones, the creators of the catalyst. They had designed this place to be a vault, a repository of knowledge and power. But it had also become something else, a prison. The catalyst was not just a key to another dimension, it was a lock. And the universe had been waiting for the right moment to unlock it. As they descended into the depths, the air grew colder, and the walls seemed to pulse with an energy that was at once ancient and alive. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and Blake could hear the faint hum of the catalyst's power growing stronger with every step. The walls, etched with alien writing, seemed to glow with a faint ethereal light. It was like stepping into the heart of the universe itself, a place where time and space bent and twisted in ways that defied understanding. They reached the core of the facility, an enormous chamber, its walls lined with crystalline structures that hummed with energy. At the center of the room, the catalyst pulsed like a beating heart, a swirling mass of light and dark, its tendrils of energy reaching outward, seeking something. or someone. Blake approached the catalyst, feeling the raw, chaotic energy that flowed through the room. The air was thick with it, charged with a power that was both terrifying and intoxicating. As he reached out, his hand trembling, he could feel it. The connection. The catalyst was alive, and it was waiting for him, waiting for humanity. "Commander," Dr. Varios said, his voice strained with awe and fear. "You're the one. The catalyst recognizes you. It's calling you." Blake hesitated, but only for a moment. The truth had been revealed to him, and he understood now. Humanity was not just a key to unlocking the catalyst. It was a mirror, a reflection of the universe itself. They were the ultimate test. Could they endure the chaos that the catalyst would unleash, or would they succumb to it, like every other species before them? Blake stepped forward, placing his hand on the crystalline surface of the catalyst. The energy surged through him, filling his body with a power unlike anything he had ever felt. The rift began to open, the very fabric of reality warping around them, and for a moment, Blake could see it. The other dimension, a space beyond time and space, a realm where everything and nothing existed at once. But then, something shifted. The catalyst was not just opening a rift, it was responding to them. Humanity had passed the test. They had withstood the forces of chaos. They had proven that they could endure the entropy of the universe and still emerge strong. The rift began to close. The universe was saved. But as the rift sealed itself, Blake looked into the dark void beyond the catalyst, and for the first time, he realized the full weight of what had just happened. The universe had been altered, but not destroyed. The catalyst had forged a new reality, a reality where humanity would play a pivotal role, a reality where humanity would survive. Blake took a deep breath, the silence in the room almost suffocating. The war was over. The test had been passed. But in the back of his mind, one question lingered. What now?